On my last cruise, a Queen Mary 2 crossing, I admit I was nervous about disembarkation. Not because the trip was ending, but I was really apprehensive about a potentially uncomfortable encounter with my cabin steward. Him loitering and wondering if I was going to give him a tip, and me feeling guilty because I wasn't. Gratuities on a cruise have got more complicated recently. I want to talk about that, what it means, and why I wasn't leaving a tip. Welcome aboard. I'm Gary Bembridge, and I'm hoping you will join the gratuities debate, as I know you will have strong views about what I'm about to say. The first big issue I wrestle with is what exactly are gratuities on a cruise these days? Every single dictionary definition says there's something given voluntarily to thank someone for good service. Two key aspects, voluntary and good service, suggesting people actually going above and beyond their duty. Lines are giving up any pretense that gratuities are either voluntary or for added good service. When I first started cruising, gratuities were just that. We all gave cash tips directly to crew we felt had done an amazing job. We all assumed crew in every single department were getting a fair wage, and those tips were a bonus for passenger-facing crew. Now, the Lions eventually argued when auto gratuities were introduced that it was much fairer way to go because a pool of money would then be split and cascaded to all departments, contributing to my experience, and that everybody who had made my trip would benefit. However, if that was the intention, that soon changed. Gratuities became, in my view anyway, a tool the cruise lines used to achieve lower fares to entice us to book, funded by paying crew lower base wages. They then used those auto-added gratuities to claw money back to bolster crew pay back to what it should have been in the first place. Let's be clear. Cruise lines expect us to pay more for our cruise than their advertised fare suggests. They expect us to pay the fare plus gratuities, and they need us to do that for crew to get wages at least at the going industry rate. To ensure we paid up, Lines auto-added them onto our bills, but now I see three trends beginning to emerge to enforce this, as I think resistance is starting to grow to auto-gratuities. First of all, Lines auto-adding gratuities are starting to cloud the narrative by giving them alternative names. For example, Princess on my recent Alaska cruise called them Daily Crew Appreciation. Holland America called them Crew Appreciation and Service Charges on my Scandinavian cruise, while on Cunard Queen Mary 2 Transatlantic it was just called a service charge. Maybe they're renaming them to cloud that they are actually ramping up the cost of gratuities at the same time, which is possible. Most lines now have gratuities at between $14 and $20 per person per day based on cabin grade, which also applies, by the way, to children sharing a parent's cabin. That adds between $200 and $300 for a couple for a 7-day cruise. So between $400 to $600 for a family of 4. And that's constantly increasing all the time. Now, as cost grows, passengers are noticing the scale of these charges and are starting to push back much more on those charges. That's why I believe I'm seeing more lines trying to obscure the size of them by offering optional fare upgrades that bundle gratuities with Wi-Fi, drinks packages, specialty dining or excursion credits. For example, fares like Princess Plus, Princess Premier, Windstar all-in fares. Many lines have them. Celebrity, by the way, went a step further and changed their fares to always included as the only fare they were offering, and they increased their fares upwards accordingly. The third change was many value and premium lines, mostly UK-based by the way, bit the bullet and have joined ultra-luxury lines like Seabourn, Silversea and Regent Seven Seas, and they've increased their fares to include gratuities in the base fare instead. These include lines like Virgin Voyages, Azamara, Saga, P&O Cruises UK and Marella, who operate out of the UK. The effect of all of these changes is that cruise passengers, including me, are now paying a rate for a cruise that covers gratuities no matter what line or what fare combination we're cruising on nowadays. While it is possible on almost all lines, except I think only for Norwegian Cruise Line at the time of recording, to remove auto gratuities when you're on board, few passengers actually seem to do that. I did a survey on my channel of over 4,000 cruisers, and only 10% who responded said they actually remove auto gratuities. Now, I never remove those gratuities because I feel if I do, the crew are going to subsidize my trip by getting lower wages. So is the fact that I'm now paying those auto gratuities or gratuities bundled in the fare the reason I did not tip anything to the cabin steward I mentioned earlier? It's not the case. It's more complicated, and as I said earlier, it's getting more so. Knowing that I have paid gratuities does give me, though, a dilemma around what the right thing to do is, particularly for crew I have really close interactions with, like my cabin steward, butler if I'm in a suite, and if I'm doing fixed dining, the waiting staff that deal with me every single day. Possibly as I started cruising in the days before auto added gratuities and I am used to handing out envelopes of cash at the end of the cruise, I really feel guilty if I'm still not doing that. In that poll I mentioned I did on my channel, 50% of cruise passengers say they pay cash tips to select crew members on top of auto gratuities or when they're on lines where gratuities are already included in the fare. I am, as you now know, one of those, but recently I decided to stop double tipping as a habit, as it can really mount up and fares and costs of cruising at the same time are ramping up. Now I'm trying to get myself used to and to follow these 5 key principles which may help you. First, I budget on the basis that I will pay a cruise fare that always includes base gratuities for the crew. So that could be their auto added, included in some bundle like Princess Premier, or within an all-inclusive fare like, say, on Azamara or Seabourn or Silversea. I know that this will be in a pot. It'll be shared to all of those people I deal with, those I deal with often, infrequently, and those people behind the scenes. Now, I do often increase those auto gratuities if throughout the cruise, the service and the experience has been really high. So again, everybody benefits. Now, this was the case, for example, on my Oceania Marina Panama cruise earlier this year, where right across the board, the service was great, and I felt I'd like everybody to benefit. Now, I especially do this if I have onboard credit that I do not use up, or I find myself slipping into that habit of looking for ways to spend it. I instead use those onboard credits to increase auto added gratuities, though before I do, I always check if it actually can be used for gratuities. Now, I was about to do that on my recent Azamara Quest cruise because I had a lot of onboard credit. It was given to me as a fair price match, but Azamara rules do not allow onboard credit to be used for extra gratuities. So I could have ended up with an unspent onboard credit and a wafty extra bill. The other downside of upping auto gratuities is the people you interact with often who may hope or expect an added tip will not know that you've actually done that. And so this leads me on to my second key principle. I always take cash with me, though not of the scale in the days before auto added. And this is to tip crew that I've come into regular contact with that go above and beyond in some way and have made my cruise truly special. By the way, when it comes to paying cash tips, I pay in either US dollars or the official currency on the ship, which in most cases is US dollars. But if I were, say, on a P&O ship or a Saga ship out of the UK, where the official currency was the pound sterling, that is what I would pay. Let me give you an example of how this has played out, which is where that cabin steward I mentioned earlier comes back. On my recent Cunard Queen Mary 2 transatlantic, the waiters in the Queen's Court restaurant were fantastic. We had the same waiters allocated for breakfast, lunch, and for dinner. They learned our quirks. They preempted everything we needed, from things like oat milk on the table for breakfast to spinach as an extra with my meal every night. And they even preemptively requested a non-dairy baked Alaska alternative for my partner. It wasn't on the menu, but they knew they didn't have dairy, and so they ordered it. They joked with us, they elevated the experience. We gave all of them extra tips. On the other hand, we had a butler and a cabin steward. They provided a perfectly fine service. It was pretty much as expected. We had to chase up a couple of things. There were a number of errors. They didn't really elevate or make the trip that special. So I actually felt that the normal auto-added gratuities were perfectly fine. However, on my Oceania trip the month before, where it actually also been, by the way, upgraded into a suite, which was very nice, the butler and the cabin steward were super attentive. They learned all my quirks, what I liked, what I didn't like. And without asking, for example, they tweaked the evening canapes by observing what I ate and left. They knew I didn't drink alcohol, caffeine, and sugary drinks, so they hunted for options, and they even brought a non-alcoholic sparkling wine to replace the champagne I got left on embarkation. The butler even offered to lend me his own personal multi-USB charger to use because he saw I had lots of camera equipment and devices to charge. So I tipped both of those people generously. But I didn't tip the waiters because, again, that was a perfectly fine and normal service. Another example was by my partner, who spends hours every day on a cruise playing blackjack, interacts, gets to know the dealers who make his cruise really well. They joke with him, they laugh with him, and so on. So he always tips the dealers at the end of playing. So I do tip on top of order gratuities if I genuinely see added service. But I still find it really stressful because old habit dies hard. And I just feel like it's really hard to really wrestle with, which brings me on to my principle number 3. I do call out and name everyone that's given great service in the post-cruise survey. This crew and managers keep telling me is key for staff to get recognition, bonuses sometimes, and definitely promotion. So even if I've not tipped individuals, it can help the crew enormously. Now, to make sure, by the way, I don't forget anyone, I take photos of their name badges so I can get their name and position right. Now, this was a tip that a crew member once gave me when stressing how important calling people out in that post-cruise survey is. So who do I never tip? This brings me on to my principle number 4. I never tip when I'm buying drinks, because the gratuity, often as much as 18%, is added on automatically. So I leave the section to add even more tip blank. Gratuities are also added onto the price of any drinks packages too, by the way. The same is true in the spa, the salon, or if you're going to the hairdressers. If I'm having specialty coffees or buying ice cream or gelato, again, I don't give a tip. Either it's auto added or there's none expected. If crew members handle special requests like fixing things like a broken toilet or conditioning, or I've messed up my safe and I need someone to come and fix it, I don't tip those people. I also never tip senior crew, including the captain, the cruise director, head chef, maitre d', guest services, or excursion team, because what I learned over time is they're usually actually well paid, and in some cases it's actually not considered appropriate. That also applies to the entertainment team who run events, the performers or the guest artists, or any people playing live music around the ship. Now, some of my friends disagree with me. They like to tip, say, the pianist in the piano bar to get their requests they believe sort of higher up in the priority. I also don't normally tip when I go to specialty dining because the extra charge should cover that. And actually the waiters are included in that gratuities pool already. So what are your thoughts on gratuities, and have you changed, or are you thinking of changing what you do? I'd love to hear in the comments what you're currently thinking. And so while you consider that, take a look at this video where I look at 7 things that smart cruisers do, starting with one thing that I found makes the biggest difference of all. See you over there.